Please submit your questions in the chat, and I am going to be a moderator for this last panel. Little bit about my background. So I actually did study sustainable tourism. That's been already 10 years ago, also a long time ago, in Europe, and at a fantastic group of international people who are all passionate about sustainability. So the focus of the degree that I did was more on the management side of tourism and policy making and new innovative products for the industry, but very, very closely tied into the ESG or the sustainability itself. So that was years ago, and now I went through a journey, professional journey, through different types of industries, mostly in real estate, and also working with some educational NGOs, and that's how I also ended up working with David, who is on the call today as well, and with Soap Cycling through the University of Hong Kong and the Foundation for Shared Impact, where I manage the educational program. And through that work, I connected with Soap Cycling and the Green Hospitality as a program under the Sustainable Development Fund that I had to implement here in Hong Kong. And provided my background, I just went ahead and started managing it because it was my passion for many years. I haven't had a chance to work in it before. So over the 2 years, I think we have gone a long journey since last year conference in 2019, April, which was a big success. And unfortunately, we had to be delaying this year's event from April until now, and finally decided to do it online. We hope it still provides similar value or the same value. And the journey has been long, but we have done so many different things since then. And that's including some research that we have also circulated with you. We have started working with you much more closely through think tanks, designing projects, working on different issues and tackling them, involving the different stakeholders to work together alongside each other to resolve them. So that is a little bit on me as a moderator of this panel. And now I'm happy to invite my other panelists who already have their cameras on, I hope, and they're unmuted. So we will have Melanie Kwok, the Group Senior Sustainability Manager of Sino Group. Now we're going to have also a representative from a designer side, so a little bit different, architecture and design. Lauren Loeli, co-founder and senior designer at S.lo. And then finally, somebody from F&B. So Babsi Gaia, founder of the well-established Mana here in Hong Kong. Let me then start with introducing the individual panelists as we did for the other panels. And I will start with Melanie, who will then introduce a little bit about Sino and the circularity systems that they have built within their properties. So Melanie Kwok is the Senior Civil Manager of Sino Group. She oversees a range of sustainability projects related to environmental management, community engagement, and heritage conservation, including Sino Hotels and Tayo Heritage Hotel. Being a specialist in the realm of sustainable development for over 10 years, Melanie has also gained extensive experience in sustainability tourism and stakeholder engagement. And now, Melanie, the floor is yours. Please introduce us a little bit to the Sino initiatives.
Great, thank you for having me, and it's been a very fruitful morning. It's wonderful to be in this Green Hospitality Conference. So well done to every speaker. It's been very insightful. So just quickly, just to run through my part, as I know, like you said, I think people are enjoying their lunch while listening to the talk. Sino Group, as you all know, is the developer, one of the leading developers in Hong Kong. So we are the hotel owners and operators indeed. And aside from the Hong Kong Gold Coast Hotel, which I will use this as a case study to share that what we've been doing recently in terms of like promoting circular economy and green education, we also run other hotels in Hong Kong, such as the Royal Pacific Hotel, City Garden, Island Pacific, Pontinger, and also our upcoming project, as you might have seen the news, is the Ocean Park, Fullerton Ocean Park Hotel will be opening soon. So we are very excited. We also have hotels in Fullerton Hotel in Singapore and Sydney as well. So because we are the developers, and as earlier we saw this great insights about created share value, we're also doing our best to actually achieve the mindset of it. So for us, we actually have our own individual sustainability team. So we report directly to the owner of Sino Group, which is very important to drive the sustainability across the operator. So for us, we actually have some of the goals settings in 2030. etc. So for us, for example, we are one of the first developers in Hong Kong to pledge a single use of plastic reduction. So we made a pledge that we want to reduce 50% of single-use plastic by 2022 and using the baseline 2017. And because of that, immediately we have eradicated all the single-use plastic bottles in our hotel rooms, as well as the straws, the cutleries, and takeaway boxes, etc. So this is something that we've been achieving across the group. And in terms of food items as well, we have actually also pledged to achieve over 50-60% sustainable seafood by 2030. And at the moment, over 60% of our seafood items are also sustainable seafood. Next slide. So it's very important for us these days to look into how we can promote staycation, because as you know, the COVID-19 impact actually taught us many lessons. And one of the very important lessons we learned in being a hotel operator is that how can we think about attractive staycation packages that attract our local customers, but at the same time that can actually embrace sustainability. So in 2017, our Sino Group owner and our team actually comes up with this idea called the G.R.E.E.N. And that being the fact that we chose Hong Kong Gold Coast Hotel because I'm not sure if everyone here have been to the Gold Coast Hotel, but basically it's a very beautiful 5-star resort hotel in Tuen Mun. And our major customers are mainly from the local families. So we see this as a market. And we think that it's very important that we want our families to enjoy the staycation in the hotel. And it's very important to actually embrace the sustainability education. So what do we have in this G.R.E.E.N? So examples is that we actually have the outdoor organic farm. It's called the Gold Coast Farm. We also run green ambassador programs so that we actually engage the hotel guests as well as the NGOs and charity groups to come and have a hands-on experience on organic farming. Just very recently, last month, we are one of the first hotel in Hong Kong to have an outdoor butterflies and herbs farm. And that is actually to work with NGOs. As we see earlier on, it's very important to have partnerships. So we've partnered with 2 NGOs to actually have a butterfly reserved area to attract over 20 types of butterflies and an outdoor area to promote the biodiversity, which is also one of very important SDG goals. We also had very important for us to also come back to climate change. So a few years ago, we started installing solar panels. So at the moment in the site in the Hong Kong Gold Coast, we have installed over 800 solar panels in the hotels as well as across the hotels area as well. Back in a few years ago, we were one of the first hotels in Hong Kong that actually installed the largest number of solar panels. And I think it's very important for us to actually keep the needle going. So we're also looking into different types of renewable energy in the upcoming few years. So up next, one of the very important essence that we would love to discuss today with the panelists is actually how to promote circular economy. So an example from us is that in around 2017-18, we came up with an idea of having the first Hong Kong's upcycle hotel guest room. Well, actually, if you are staying in a hotel, usually the first thing you look at is the really beautiful lobby, the surfaces. But for us, it's also very important to enjoy what you have in the guest room facilities. So we came up with this idea of having an upcycle hotel guest room. So when you open the door, you will see that most of the furniture in this room is actually made of upcycle materials. Just to name a few, the lamps, for example, they're made of like plastic little bottle caps. And it was we partnered with 7 local artists and NGOs on this whole first hotel theme room. So you see the bed runners, you see the beautiful upcycling lamps, the chairs, the cushions, and the little chairs that actually even both adults and kids can enjoy. They're made of 8 carton shells. So later on, understand that we can have some discussion of where these ideas come from, whether it's actually attractive or not. But I can tell you it's very attractive right now, even in this situation in Hong Kong. People do look into this room. So so it actually showcased that even at this COVID-19 impact, which is actually affecting the hospitality owners and operators, it is still very important for us to promote environmental sustainability operations in the hotel and in tourism industry. So that's my sharing.
Thank you, Melanie. Fantastic. We're going to come back to that a bit later. Some questions for you. And I would like to invite Loeli, co-founder and senior designer at S.L.O. to get ready as I'm introducing her. So Loeli is a principal designer of S.L.O. Studio, an interior design and creative branding firm that explores holistic approaches to design. Lo guides clients in making these design choices that are visually, behaviorally, and environmentally conscious, and has designed spaces such as Banyan Workspace in Quarry Bay. Now, please share with us, how do you approach it from a designer point of view in terms of circularity when furnishing spaces for hospitality businesses?
Sure, thank you for that introduction. Yes, I'm Lo Eli. I am the co-founder and principal designer of S.L.O. We're a new interior design studio based in Hong Kong. We do focus on holistic creative solutions, but we also have quite a strong kind of operations and client management. I myself have a background in luxury hospitality design. I was the senior FF&E designer at one of the well-known firms here in Hong Kong. So I have worked with a lot of the hotel groups, actually, that may be here today. And also my business partner has her background as well in luxury hospitality management. We can move on to the next slide. So just to bring it down to earth a little bit, while I was also designing for 5-star luxury hotels, I simultaneously was personally living in a space that was completely furnished with furniture basically from the street. I know that sounds a little bit funny, but what I'm trying to kind of bring up is that there definitely can be a happy medium between aesthetics and making conscious choices. So yes, so that's just from my personal background. And we, as a studio, when we started last year, we decided that we really wanted to focus on this philosophy of creating sanctuary. And for us, that idea of sanctuary, creating that experience, it was really important to use authentic, natural materials and really have a holistic approach from concept to construction. That helps us to basically to help promote a mindful way of living. So we really look at the design as a way to signal behavior modification and also just to help individuals thrive within the space. So we can move to the next slide. So Banyan Workspace was a project that we completed last year. It is a beautiful boutique co-working and event space located in Quarry Bay. It's actually been featured in Architectural Digest in China. But you can see just from the pictures that the brand itself, we worked with them from their brand identity and concept through to the finishing touches. They are a brand that absolutely exemplifies that idea of aligning profit with purpose. And we just really enjoyed working with them, because our values were quite aligned. And they, in turn, in our collaboration, have really inspired some of our core values. They're very committed to sustainability, and you can see in the design that we've really kept it very natural. But they also have kind of operational components that they incorporate into their business. And I think this is a really key point, is that as a designer, we are, the end decision is with the client, so we can guide and we can help the client to make certain decisions, but in the end it really does have to come from the core value of the business. So obviously it's a pleasure to work with companies like this. We can move to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yes, okay, thank you. So this is just to show you on the top left, just a quick a view of how one of the very main decisions that we made from the beginning once we saw the space was deciding not to demolish the existing structure. So even though there was an existing structure in the space that I think aesthetically speaking could have been, would have been nice to be able to remove and start completely fresh, it also would have produced a lot of demolition waste. And so we decided from the beginning that we would work around it and actually incorporate it into the concept itself. So you can see that the columns that are in the space are clad in wood, and we've done that to signify within the concept of the banyan tree, those are the aerial roots coming down from the trees and into the ground. So it feels as though in a certain way you're moving through the space and you're being greeted by these tree branches, as opposed to structural elements that are kind of in the way. So we decided from the beginning that architecturally we would really try to maintain the existing structure while making small modifications that had a big impact. For example, making one area a double height space, which made a huge impact in the space and the way that the layout flowed. Another component, obviously, we used a lot of plants throughout the space. All of those plants are air purifying plants. That was really important to the client for their members. And also just touch points and details like waste separation and really making that kind of an enjoyable experience. So within the kitchen, even luxurious tags and signage to show where to place your waste. And the team, the operations team is really committed to taking care of that waste disposal for their members. And even go as far as to not place waste bins in other locations in the space, just so that it minimizes people throwing things out. So this is all, it's all in the details. And so we've really tried to incorporate that into the design. This slide just shows a few of the material selections, and I can run through those in detail later if someone has questions, but for the most part, either a vintage rug or wool rug, for example. We've got a fast-growing wood wall covering. So this basically very fast-growing hardwood resources that create these wall coverings that are beautiful, and a 100% raffia woven wall covering that has a recycled paper backing. We bought for their library, we procured an entire collection of vintage books in a language that nobody here understands, but it filled the shelves decoratively instead of buying fake books or blank book blocks. They've actually procured this vintage collection. Things like lighting switches can be moved from one space to another. And this is just to show for hospitality procurement teams. Sorry, we can move to the next slide, that's fine. To show for hospitality procurement teams who often come up to the point of, you've got great designs and great innovations, but then you could get to the point of actually specifying, and the materials don't live up to spec, up to the requirements needed. This is a Polonia wood wall covering that we featured at the ceiling at the double height space. And it's a Class A fire rating. So just to show you that there are very established material vendors who have beautiful, luxurious materials that are very sustainable choices. And you really have to think about the life cycle of each of these material choices. You kind of want something that is either really long life cycle or something that would biodegrade very easily. And this is just another example of a circularity case study. For a bespoke piece we made, there were 48 drawers in this sort of Chinese medicine cabinet. But in order to build the frame, we actually found a library, the library catalog system, the G.R.E.E.N system, an old piece of furniture that we reused those 48 drawers for as the frame, and then put on a new face and a new hardware. So there's just ways to avoid creating more material for this kind of bespoke pieces. And this piece has actually now been put into a new space and reconfigured and kind of cut in half and used again. So we're trying as much as we can to just utilize what we have. And I think it's an important part of especially renovating or moving space, that you can look at the assets that you already have and think about how they can be creatively reused.
Thank you so much for your sharing. Very interesting and fantastic. We're going to come to some questions later, but now I'd like to give the word to Bob C., our last speaker on this panel, to tell us a little bit more. He has his own outfit there, I can see it already, to tell us a little bit more about how to manage circularity in the F&B sector. And so let me just introduce Bobsy, who is a well-known figure, I think, in Hong Kong by a lot of people who try to live sustainably. So born in Beirut, Lebanon, Bobsy has been pioneering socially responsible businesses in Hong Kong since 1992. As an ecopreneur, he has sought to build healthy and sustainable communities through ecologically viable food and has founded or co-founded many of the vegetarian eateries that have become the standard bearers of the health movement in Hong Kong: Bookworm Cafe, Life Cafe, and Mana. Since the 90s, Bobsy has been championing the ongoing planting of the llama forest, and through Able Charity, which he co-founded in 1994, efforts to protect and expand the forest continue today. In 2009, his Save the Human, Don't Eat the Planet campaign won the Best Documentary Award in ISHOT Film Festival Film Awards. No matter the format or the context, Bobsy's bottom line remains the same: to live a vocation that is socially responsible, ecologically conscious, and of service to humanity and the planet. So Bobsy, the floor is yours to present.
Thank you, Lucia. Sounds like I've been leading a very interesting life here in Hong Kong for the last 30 years. When it's read out that way, it's good to hear and remind oneself. I think the bottom line is following your passion, really, waking up to your passion. It doesn't matter if you're in the food business or a hotel business or design business or any business, it does not matter. What we need to do now is move away from business as usual to business as unusual. And here in front of me, we see a graphic from Mana showing what we called a circular economy or a closed economy. And now this is something we've implemented in Mana from the very beginning. There is no excuse for any F&B operators out there not to be doing this. We successfully managed to start doing this in January 2019. Why? Because it took us, almost 8 years to be able to get all of our packaging to be compostable and biodegradable, so that it all could be composted and biodegraded together with the leftover foods, the food scraps, the food waste. So the graphic there is quite self-explanatory, and this you will see above all the recycling bins in any Mana you go to. So customers eat their food, happy customers. If there are any leftovers, it goes together into the compost bin with their packaging. It's picked up every day. Every day we have the contractors coming to pick it up, and then it gets taken to the composting facilities here in Hong Kong, and these are private facilities. It's a bit unclear now if the private contractor is taking it to OPARC or not. We're struggling to understand that. But nevertheless, it gets turned into compost. This takes about 2 months, and then hopefully gets turned into soil. And that soil is usually delivered to gardening centers, parks, even some organic farmers. And then, of course, food can be grown back on the soil again, and then it comes back to Mana as food, and round we go. I've been struggling to understand if OPARC is actually composting packaging together with food waste. And I asked that question earlier, and I've been asking it a few times today. We are not getting a clear answer because of COVID-19, whether OPARC is composting the biodegradable plant plastic packaging together with the food waste. So if anyone can answer that question for us, please help us out. Next slide, please. This is an example of Mana's packaging. Now, everything you see there, including the straw and the cup, and especially the coffee cup lid, it's all made from compostable materials, either from plants or paper. So it can all be composted together with food waste here in Hong Kong. It took us many years to be able to get everything fully biodegradable. Of course, Mana's never used plastic. In fact, I've never used plastic ever in any of the restaurants since 1997. So there's no excuse for any F&B operators out there to be using plastic or styrofoam. Just get on with it, man. Just really seriously get on with it. Next slide, please. I don't know, yeah, who sent that slide in, but my hair looks good there. But seriously, yes, that is the soil I'm holding in one hand and the packaging in the other. So all of Mana's food waste, from leftovers, kitchen cuttings, scraps, anything customers can't finish, and Mana's packaging, that's our salad boxes and so on and so forth, gets turned into soil, which you see me holding in my left hand. So that's the end result of all of our customers' efforts to actually put food leftovers and packaging into the compost bin. That's the result we get. And there's a little bit of gray area now due to COVID-19 and what's going on, but hopefully we can overcome that. And yeah, that's the end goal of what we're doing.
Thank you, Betsy. So let me just, I think all of your perspectives are just very different, and you showcase very different ways, from huge corporate to like a small business, and how this is possible or not possible, or what actually is out there and what you're doing. I'd like to now go into some of the questions that we discussed, and I welcome also some of the questions from the audience. I already have one, so we will ask that later. But I'd like to start with Melanie and give her one question, which is also related to waste. So we heard that you have a farm at your property. So my question would be, do you utilize, say, your food waste and compost it and utilize it for that farm? How do you close the loop of the food waste and your properties?
It's a very good question. Thank you, Lucia. Yes, we actually treat food waste in 3 ways. So first of all, we do actually have 2 food waste machines in our Hong Kong Coco's Hotel. So one of them is actually, in fact, operated by Ocker, by Anne Copland's wonderful team, and that converts into effluents. And the other one is actually, we do have a very small food waste machines on the farm, which converts into compost. And that actually being used in the organic farm itself. And it actually teaches our hotel guests and the children about the very importance of actually how to ensure the food waste is actually being fully utilized. Another thing is also it's very important for us to, because we're large hotel operators. You mentioned we have like at least 4 or 5 outlets in our Hong Kong Coco's Hotel. So we actually have a food waste menu installed in our hotel with options choices as well. So that's very important these days, that as Betsy said, it's very important that we as an operator can start even a small step as we can encourage our hotel guests and our customers to actually change the behavior. So we actually have a food waste options where people can choose the size of their options. We also have encouragement notes in our buffet area. Very interestingly, because of the COVID and the government has relaxed the regulations, you've seen that people are now flocking into the hotels to enjoy the buffets. So we just want to ensure that even with this situation, we encourage our guests to actually and nurture their food wise mindset. So we actually have this food wise encouragement note in the buffet as well. Another thing is that talk about created share value. It's very important also because we also have food waste surplus, especially in the breakfast buffet. We see that there are actually quite a number of surplus bread and rice, for example. So we do work with NGOs like Foodlink. I know some of them actually in this panels today. Foodlink, Food Angel, St. James, etc., to donate our food waste, food surplus to those in need as well. So we ensure that food waste is very important. We also have our internal food waste task force team within the hotel, with the chefs, with the hygiene manager, with the F&B manager. We do meet on a regular basis to look into the food waste figures and data. We also set the food waste reduction target as a group, so that we can actually monitor the figures as well.
So just maybe I missed that, but when you utilize the food waste, you turn into compost, you use it in your organic farm. Yes. And what do you do with the produce? Do you also use it in your menus? So do you really do the circle?
Yes, Actually, for the organic farm, because we have at least 40, 50 different types of harvests, so our chefs will come and pick up some of the produce in the farm, like tomatoes and things like that. And some of them will be used in the menus. And some of them, we also organize the public harvest day, where the hotel guests can come to the farm and enjoy the harvest themselves. And very importantly, that they have the hands-on farming experience. So from getting the fertilizer from the food waste machines to planting to harvesting, etc., they can have the hands-on experience on that.
Thank you, Melanie. Let me ask now Lauren one question. As a designer, so we have seen how you have furbished one of the exemplary projects like Banyan Workspace. So you talked about like utilizing either something that will be really long-standing, so it doesn't have to be trashed very soon, or could be repurposed, or then using completely natural materials that could decompose later. But there is one crucial thing when you furnish a space, right? When you bring in the materials, the packaging. How do you go about that? How do you work on this issue? How do you manage your supply chain?
So this is a really big challenge. Even when you're specifying natural materials or sustainable materials, inevitably they're coming to you in packaging with plastic and styrofoam. And so these are things ideally that the company or the vendor that you're purchasing from is already tackling and handling on their end. But oftentimes it is about communicating that to vendors, or just being aware that that's what you will be receiving, so that you can go ahead and set up a system for disposing of it to the proper waste facilities. And this is something that we actually learned through that project that I showcased, because that was a very important part for our client, and they took the lead on that, and we learned a lot from them. So that is a major challenge, and it's something I think that as a designer who is bringing business to certain vendors, it is important to continue to pressurize that supply chain and tell them how they need to be packaging their materials. On the other end, for the client, there may be, you know, some compromises that could be made to if it's a local, regionally sourced item, that they may also just request, and because of liability, a vendor won't do this without being told to, but just request that it is not packaged on its way, and that it is just maybe covered with a blanket or something on its way, as long as it's a, you know, it's a truck shipment. So another point is that we will, you know, depending on the client's needs, we will focus on sourcing regionally versus sourcing from somewhere that's going to be air freighted. And that just depends, because if you're looking at the regional supply chain, you may not have as many hospitality or contract grade options for your specifications. So there is a balance there.
Thank you so much. I have now a question for Bobsy. So I wonder, because you mentioned the long journey, almost 10 years, right? It took you to align everything in your operations of Mana to be really circular, and the way that you see and then align with your values. But I'm wondering for other F&B operators that there's no excuse to not to do this, but I'm wondering on the financial side. So is there any cost that is involved in turning into more sustainable circular business like yours? And what message do you have there for the F&B sector?
My message for the F&B sector is seriously stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution. Do you not pay rent? Do you not pay utilities? Do you not pay your staff? Why on earth do you not pay for the environment? Of course, it's more expensive to be eco-friendly, but at what cost if we don't pay it? So we need to expand the business paradigm. Business must incorporate the environment, just the way it incorporates salaries and rent and so on and so forth. It took 10 years for the technology producing packaging in China and other parts of the world to catch up, really. But in 1997, 1998, when we opened the Bookworm Cafe, all our packaging was made from bagasse, from grass, which was so easily compostable. In fact, we used to feed it to the 2 Vietnamese pot-belly pigs on Lama, who used to eat all our food waste or the leftover by customers and the packaging. So yes, it's more expensive. Of course it's more expensive. How can it not be? However, demand and supply. As the demand increases, so does the cost come down. So the cost of eco-friendly packaging is getting cheaper and cheaper as each year goes by, because more and more people are demanding to use it. So yes, we have no choice. What else can we do? And COVID-19 is the great awakener, as someone's mentioning earlier, that COVID-19 is that was David Bishop from Soap Cycling saying that COVID-19 is a wonderful chance to get our act together. And that's why I keep on saying that COVID-19 is the great awakener that has come at the 11th hour to wake us up, to divert us from the path in which we're heading, lest we end up getting there. So this is a wonderful chance for all of us on every level, in every business, in every community, right. NGOs, government, to really adjust our practices.
Right, I really like the mention of like, we have to start paying for the environment because we don't pay for the resources, like we don't pay for water, we actually pay for the packaging of that water and the service, right? So we have to kind of maybe shift our mindset. So like there is actually value in the nature around us. We have to pay for disposing or utilizing better alternatives. Now, if you think, I think in our discussions before, you mentioned that this cost difference to your business represents about 5 to 10%, right? That you dedicate from your resources to be completely sustainable. But on the other hand, also, you mentioned that the demand from the customers is increasing. So despite the COVID, you have been having stable customer base. You haven't really noticed any changes. Is that right?
Not quite. I'll give you an example. Our salad box, a large salad box, costs us approximately 3 Hong Kong dollars. A large styrofoam box that you can get from many restaurants costs 10 cents, Hong Kong cents. So the difference is vast. Yes, Mana has remained busy during the protests and during COVID. But like everyone else, we're impacted. Our business is about 30 to 40% down. But nevertheless, we're still very busy, and in times of trouble, in times of stress, people will always revert to eating healthy or going to the gym or practicing yoga, because in times of stress, and one thing you can do is look after yourself. So you can eat healthy and you can practice yoga and do any esoteric form of practice. But I'm seeing many questions coming in here. There seems to be a bit of confusion. Yes, all of our packaging gets composted with the food waste. Yes, yes, yes. Please look at the circular economy chart. And a wonderful question coming in from Dana. Dana, respect to you and everything you do in Hong Kong. That clear plastic-like cup is made from plants. Yes, yes, yes. So is the straw. And yes, it all gets composted here in Hong Kong together with the food waste.
Fantastic, thank you, Bobsy. So let me mention a few more questions that we have for Lo and Lai. So one of the attendees is asking, are your materials that you showcased earlier also certified for strength and fire safety? That's a question from Saura.
In our case, mostly yes, and I would say that there are definitely some exceptions. Things like linen, for example, which I didn't show, is not usually a strong choice for upholstery, but it is a very good material to use sustainably. So for certain areas that may be not high traffic, as long as the corporation is willing to accept that this may need to be looked after in a different way, there are opportunities to use some maybe more considered residential materials within a space. But no, I mean, honestly, there are some amazing contract grade materials out there, and all it requires is a little bit of research. There are so many great companies working on good materials. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And innovative artisans as well. I think another thing is maybe a struggle is working with craftsmen and artisans, because there's no specification, there's no test that was done on something that was made for you bespoke. And I hope that within the procurement sort of chain, that those can be considered more often, because working with someone in your community to make something for your site, it creates story, it creates sense of place, and it really just connects you with your community and your users with particular artisans in the space. So I definitely encourage like an open-mindedness there, and I know that that's not always possible. But again, there are both ends of the spectrum. You've got big companies doing great innovative materials that are contract grade and fully tested as well.
Thank you so much. I know that in our previous discussion, both Melanie, who has actually have a product of an upcycled room, and also you mentioned that typically the problem there will be the timelines, because when working with artisans, the timeline is not always met, and it's smaller scale, so it's not very practicable to implement across a big group perhaps. And also you, Melanie, mentioned that it's maybe even better to keep it as a unique product, yes, to entice and educate more with that, in that sense. So there's one last question for Melanie before we wrap up, and that is, Melanie mentioned staycation. What has been your experience with local guests compared with tourists? Yes. I mean, as far as, you know, in the past, how receptive have local guests been to sustainability messages? I guess that many local Hong Kong guests are more familiar with traveling outside Hong Kong than inside or staycation.
Yes, I read the question. Thank you, Brian. This is a very good question. Of course, we in the past, for example, we have served mainly our customers, and many hotels in Hong Kong would be international. Because of the COVID situation for the whole 9 months, most hotels in Hong Kong now serve local customers. And of course, the biggest difference is the duration of stay. So, for example, for the overseas tourists, they will be staying 2 to 3 days, nights. But for those staycation customers, usually they only spend 1 night. So for in terms of the sustainability education, we think that actually we see the age group differences as well. So for example, for the Hong Kong Gold Coast Hotel, because most of our customers are families type, so they bring young kids and their children. And surprisingly, the Hong Kong local children, they do have quite strong environmental mindsets. And also, they love the nature. The families will love the nature and hiking, because we run around 7 hotels in Hong Kong. For example, the Hong Kong Gold Coast Hotels is close by the beach, and with some of the lovely hiking trails. And we have another hotels, as Lucia mentioned, in Tai O, which is like a fishing village. So very interesting to see the fact that these hotels, when they're so nearby the nature, they're so nearby to those hiking trails and beaches, we do actually see a lot of local customers coming in to enjoy these sites. But in terms of the environmental behavior, we see that those with kids, those with the younger children, they also seems to have quite strong environmental mindset. So for example, they will bring their own towels, they will bring their own slippers, they will actually bring their own bottles when they come to stay in our Hong Kong Gold Coast Hotel upcycle room. And to encourage our guests to actually bring in their towels, we'll actually offer $100 F&B dining coupons to encourage them to actually bring in their own amenities, their own towels. So again, we're actually doing our part to actually work with the local customers to promote the environmental behavior. And because of the COVID-19, we see that in terms of the environmental behavioral changes in hotel, it's also people are very aware of the hygiene standard, the hygiene issues, for example, and also they start to eat healthily. So when we look into the buffets in the hotels as well, in the past, there'll be a variety, people love to eat variety of food, but these days we actually see that people have more demand for organic and also for green living, healthy diets. And I think this is actually the trend that's upcoming as well.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Melanie. We are out of time, unfortunately. I would love to discuss much more, and hopefully we can invite you for one of our 1 hour long series in the future for our happy hour talks. But it was fantastic sharing. I'd like to just summarize that I think the key message here is it's about a leadership. The circularity and sustainability is about leadership, and it is possible. So no excuse, it is possible. It just takes a little bit of creativity and maybe research. We are happy to help and connect everyone who would like to work on their challenges that they have with advice, with sharing of practices as you all have to inspire them and maybe give them direction on how to make that change happen. Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you so much, Boxy, for your time. Thank you so much, Elila. Hopefully, we're going to see you very soon in another event.